When the desire to quit is strong, keep on going with the help of the cookie jar, a technique created by one of the toughest men alive, David Goggins. What is the cookie jar? David Goggins created this cookie jar method through constant exposure to pain and suffering. David explained the cookie jar method as, "The cookie jar is something I've made up of all the failures of my life. All the things that I failed and I went back and finally succeeded. All the things that kicked my ass, I put them all in the cookie jar." Okay, let's see what's the original of the cookie jar method. In his book, Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins goes on to explain in all detail his background. He doesn't filter the experiences as he wrote about the traumatic, emotionally distressing moment in his childhood all the way until his early adulthood in a row, direct away. From withstanding constant abuse from his father, enduring times where he lived in a shackled old house with his mother paying $7 rent and later on being called nigger every day in a school. Exposure to trauma shaped him into a stuttering kid with low self-esteem, full of anxiety and anger. As he puts it, he was the weakest human God ever created. But he also learned the beauty of simple things. Even in the midst of a struggle, David's mother always found a way to give some hope to little David. One of her ways was to fill up that cookie jar in the kitchen with wafers and chips. His mother let him grab a single pack of cookies only in certain moments, like after doing the chores and only like 2 or 3 times per week. To little David, grabbing one cookie from the old cookie jar was like being granted the tastiest and best quality dessert in the world. He made sure to really enjoy his treat. It was a true reward. David Goggins found in the cookie jar a source of joy, inspiration, pleasure, and motivation. He found value from simple cookies. Fast forward, the year was 2005 and David Goggins was now 30 years old. It came the time he would first employ the cookie jar method, which happened during the first ultra marathon David would ever run, the San Diego One Day. He had to run 100 miles in 24 hours. However, he hadn't put on running shoes in over a year. He hadn't trained before and he also weighed almost 300 pounds. He was at the bottom of his physical well-being and he had to pull himself out of it. What did he do? David had to remind himself of what crazy things he overcame. Of course, he reminded himself of the cookie jar his mother used to fill back when they were living in poverty. The concept came back fresh, with a new perspective. The reminder of what he had gone through and how the very thing he was doing at the moment, the first ultra marathon he had ever run, made him ask himself, who in the world would do something like that? David Goggins would. It is under the knowledge of the fact which sparked a light inside of him. He was in control of his own mind at that point, which made him surpass the physical pain. With his leg hurting, his bones broken, stress fractures, and dehydrated, and etc., David limped at first for 1 mile, but kept his pace, then ran at last 90 miles non-stop and successfully finished the race. Okay, now see the cookie jar method in life. Each time you do encounter yourself at some point where you are feeling down because such moments are going to inevitable, you are going to have to take action. Maybe you are struggling with money, maybe you've been gaining much weight, maybe you have trouble forgiving a certain people, maybe you haven't given much thought to your passion or goals, or maybe you haven't found yourself waking up one morning and wanting to stay in bed because there is not much that motivation you out there. Everyone goes through such periods in their lives. Now you have 3 choices here, which are attempting to hide your emotions, or letting the emotion drag you down, or not accept the state you are in. Sometimes we feel powerless, we lack of the energy, or we are feeling emotionally numb. Then there are those who choose not to accept that. Instead, they strive to go forward ready for the battle. The cookie jar method is one I really recommend. if leaving behind doubt and negative self-talk is of your interest. The premise regarding the cookie jar method implies that you remind yourself of the tough and painful things you've overcome. Each time things go south, pull out a cookie and get re-inspired. Okay, now how can you apply the cookie jar method? In order to apply the cookie jar method in your life, David Goggins mentions in his book that if you can think about a time or two when you overcame odds and tasted success, then you can employ it when disaster is all around. The first thing to do is get yourself a journal or paper and pen. Then you write all of your accomplishments down. Don't just include achievements, but also life obstacles. This could include losing weight, overcoming depression, or other challenging scenarios you went through. Take inventory of all the small tasks you succeeded in finishing, and remind yourself of what it felt like to overcome those obstacles. Write it all down because it's the small obstacles that build up and encourage you to keep going. When you're going through hell, keep going with the aid of the cookie jar. If you feel like quitting, pull up a cookie, get energized, and keep going.